Happiness, in its truest form, is not found in the glittering displays of success or the ceaseless pursuit of pleasure. It is a quiet and noble state of being that springs from a rightly ordered soul. Many have sought happiness in the applause of others, in the indulgence of desires, or in the comfort of possessions. Yet, after all the chasing, there remains a hollow ache within. The tragedy of modern life is not that people have ceased to seek happiness, but that they look for it in places where it cannot dwell. True joy cannot survive in the shallows of vanity. It lives only in the depths of purpose. The heart that understands this truth begins to see that happiness is not something to be acquired, but something to be awakened. The world we inhabit is filled with noise, voices that promise satisfaction if only we would buy, achieve, or become more. This illusion of modern happiness is seductive but fleeting. The more one chases comfort, the further one moves from contentment. The endless scroll of desires blinds the heart to gratitude. A man who has everything yet knows not how to be thankful is poorer than the one who has little but rejoices in it. Distraction has become our drug, dulling the ache of emptiness without healing it. We live in an age where business is mistaken for purpose and entertainment for joy. But happiness does not bloom in constant motion. It grows in moments of stillness, reflection, and gratitude. It is in the quiet recognition of life's small wonders that the soul begins to feel alive again. To live with purpose is to anchor one's happiness in something unshakable. When a person lives merely for self, happiness remains fragile and fleeting. But when life is bound to something greater, service, faith, truth, or love, it gains a deeper rhythm. The happiest people are rarely those who seek happiness. They are those who seek meaning. And in the pursuit of meaning, joy follows like a shadow. Every act done with purpose, no matter how small, becomes sacred. Washing dishes for one's family, working honestly, helping a stranger, all become vessels through which joy quietly enters the heart. Purpose gives the ordinary a holy glow. It transforms the mundane into the meaningful. When life is guided by purpose, even pain takes on meaning, and happiness becomes more resilient than sorrow. Contentment is a battle fought within. It does not arise when all circumstances are pleasant, but when the heart has learned to be still despite them. Life will always contain chaos, disappointment, and uncertainty. Yet, true happiness is not the absence of difficulty. It is peace in its midst. The soul that has learned to trust, to accept, and to persevere finds a serenity untouched by circumstance. It is an act of courage to be content when the world urges you to be restless. The person who can smile in trial, who can find gratitude in grief, possesses a strength that no misfortune can take away. The winds of life may shake the branches, but the roots of joy remain firm when they are planted in acceptance. Love is the fountain from which all lasting happiness flows. The heart was not designed to hoard affection, but to give it freely. When one lives for self alone, joy withers. When one lives for others, joy multiplies. Love expands the soul, allowing it to contain more happiness than it could ever hold through selfish desire. To love purely is to participate in the divine. It is to lose oneself and, in doing so, discover the deepest form of fulfillment. Love teaches that the greatest joy is not found in being loved, but in loving. When one gives without expecting return, when one forgives even when wounded, the heart becomes unburdened. Every act of love adds light to the world, and every light pushes back the darkness of despair. Yet, even love requires endurance, for there are seasons when life feels barren, when the heart is tired and joy seems distant. In those times, hope becomes the quiet guardian of happiness. Hope does not deny pain, it defies it. It whispers that darkness is temporary and that every night carries the promise of dawn. The discipline of hope is to keep believing in goodness, even when the world feels cold. It is the refusal to surrender to cynicism. Hope turns suffering into strength and waiting into preparation. Those who hope become unbreakable, for their happiness is not chained to what happens, but rooted in what they believe. Hope, therefore, is not naive optimism, it is sacred endurance. It is the lifeline that binds the human spirit to something eternal. Happiness, then, is not a fleeting mood, but a spiritual condition. It is born when truth governs thought, when love rules action, and when hope guards the heart. The world tells us to pursue what feels good. Wisdom teaches us to pursue what is right. And in doing what is right, joy follows naturally. The soul that serves, forgives, and endures will find that happiness is not a reward at the end of the path. It is the very air breathed along the way. To live well is to live with gratitude, to seek purpose above pleasure, to love without fear, and to hope without end. In this, even the most complicated world becomes a place where happiness is not only possible, but inevitable for the heart that has learned to see rightly. The search for true joy has been the oldest pilgrimage of the human soul. Across ages and civilizations, people have sought happiness in countless forms: riches, recognition, success, and pleasure. Yet each time the heart grasps what it desired, it soon finds itself empty again. This is because happiness, as many learn too late, is not something external that can be captured or possessed. It is a quiet and inward awakening. The world offers pleasures that fade and comforts that crumble. But true joy arises from something eternal, something that cannot be shaken by circumstance or time. It is not the laughter that depends on comfort, nor the excitement that burns out in the next season. It is a steady flame that glows even in the coldest darkness. The man who understands this truth begins to see the difference between being momentarily pleased and being deeply joyful. Pleasure visits and departs, but joy dwells and transforms. In the modern age, the search for happiness has grown louder but more desperate. The promise of happiness has become a commodity, sold through advertisements, measured through achievements, and pursued through endless distractions. People build their sense of worth on applause and approval, mistaking admiration for fulfillment. Yet the more one seeks happiness in fleeting things, the more hollow the heart becomes. The problem is not the desire to be happy. It is the misunderstanding of what happiness truly is. The soul is not designed to be filled by temporary satisfaction. It longs for something deeper and more permanent. The hunger for meaning, purpose, and truth is not a flaw. It is the signature of something divine written into human nature. When one tries to silence this hunger with noise, pleasure, or indulgence, the heart grows restless. It beats not only for survival but for significance. The reason true joy remains elusive is that it requires surrender rather than striving. It cannot be earned by achievement or manufactured by effort. It is born when the soul is aligned with what is good and true. Many people chase joy as if it were a prize to win, when in reality, joy comes as a companion when life is lived rightly. The farmer who tills the soil with honesty and patience feels it in his labor. The mother who sacrifices quietly for her child knows it in her love. The student who works diligently not for praise, but for learning finds it in the growth of his character. These moments reveal a secret. Joy does not come from getting what we want, but from becoming who we are meant to be. It is not a destination but the fragrance that follows a life lived with integrity and meaning. The human heart is a restless place, easily deceived by glittering things that promise fulfillment. Many assume that joy is the absence of pain or struggle. But if that were true, those who have suffered deeply would never smile again. Yet history tells another story. Some of the most radiant souls are those who have walked through sorrow and emerged with a deeper light in their eyes. This is because true joy is refined in the fires of struggle. It is born not in abundance, but in awareness. The one who has tasted loss learns to cherish presence. The one who has walked through darkness understands the value of light. It is suffering that strips away illusions, leaving behind only what is real. And it is in the real that joy finds its home. The heart purified by trial becomes capable of gratitude. Gratitude, in turn, opens the door to happiness that no shadow can extinguish. True joy also demands a reordering of loves. When one loves the temporary more than the eternal, disappointment is inevitable. When one builds identity upon possessions, appearance, or status, happiness becomes fragile, dependent on the whims of fortune. But when love is set upon what is lasting, truth, goodness, and love itself, the foundation becomes unshakable. Happiness rooted in truth is not easily lost, for truth does not change with circumstance. The wise man learns to love rightly, to delight in what deserves delight. He understands that joy is not found in having more, but in needing less. The moment one stops comparing and begins appreciating, the soul begins to rest. In that rest, joy takes root and grows quietly, like a seed nourished by humility. The pursuit of joy is not passive, it requires vigilance. The world is full of counterfeit joys that promise satisfaction but deliver emptiness. They shine brightly for a moment, only to fade and leave the heart darker than before. Every generation faces the same temptation to confuse excitement with joy, comfort with peace, pleasure with purpose. Yet joy is never loud or boastful, it is gentle and constant. It does not demand attention, it transforms it. It teaches the heart to find wonder in simplicity, to see beauty in the ordinary, and to trust in goodness even when life feels uncertain. True joy is not dependent on external blessings. It flows from an inward harmony between what one believes and how one lives. At its deepest level, joy is a spiritual condition, a reflection of the soul's alignment with its true purpose. It is not the denial of hardship, but the understanding that even hardship has meaning. The person who lives with this awareness does not crumble when storms come. His peace does not depend on calm seas, because it is rooted in something beyond the waves. He knows that joy is not found by escaping the world, but by seeing it rightly. It is a choice, renewed each day, to see light where others see shadow, to practice gratitude where others grumble, and to hold faith where others fear. The search for true joy, therefore, is not a journey outward but inward. It begins not by asking, "What can I gain?" but by asking, "What can I give?" The moment the heart turns from self-centered desire to selfless purpose, joy rises like the morning sun, steady, silent, and certain. The illusion of modern happiness is one of the greatest deceptions of our age. We live in a world that has learned to manufacture pleasure, but has forgotten how to nurture peace. Every day, we are surrounded by 1,000 voices telling us what will make us happy. New possessions, new experiences, new identities, new distractions. And yet, despite having more comfort, more technology, and more opportunity than any generation before us, we have never felt more restless, anxious, or dissatisfied. This paradox reveals something profoundly wrong with our understanding of happiness. We have mistaken stimulation for satisfaction and excitement for joy. The more we chase the next thrill, the emptier the heart becomes. Like drinking salt water to quench thirst, the pursuit of pleasure without purpose only deepens our hunger. Modern happiness thrives on distraction. It feeds on the ability to escape the discomfort of silence, to drown out thought with noise, and to replace reflection with entertainment. People now live in a state of constant motion, scrolling, watching, consuming, afraid of stillness because stillness forces them to face themselves. Yet, true happiness cannot be found in escape. The person who must constantly flee from his own thoughts will never find peace. Joy requires presence. It asks us to be where we are, to feel what we feel, and to face life with open eyes. But the modern world teaches avoidance. It tells us that happiness is the art of never being uncomfortable. This lie has weakened the soul, for happiness was never meant to be built upon ease. It was meant to be discovered through endurance, gratitude, and truth. There is a profound difference between pleasure and joy. Pleasure depends on circumstance, joy depends on character. Pleasure comes from what we experience, joy comes from what we understand. Pleasure can be bought, repeated, and imitated, but joy must be grown within. Pleasure leaves us craving more, for it is shallow and temporary. Joy, however, satisfies because it springs from depth. It arises not from the things we have, but from the person we become. When people confuse pleasure for happiness, they begin to live reactively, chasing the next thing that promises a spark of excitement. This cycle of pursuit leads not to fulfillment, but to exhaustion. The modern heart, overwhelmed with distraction, becomes spiritually malnourished. The noise of the world drowns out the quiet wisdom that could have led to peace. Happiness has been reduced to an emotional high, a temporary sense of delight that must constantly be sustained. This is why so many feel anxious even when life is good. They fear the moment the feeling fades. But true happiness is not a feeling to be maintained, it is a state of being that endures. It is steady, not because life is easy, but because it is anchored in meaning. When happiness depends on the perfect arrangement of external things, relationships, success, or comfort, it becomes fragile. One disappointment can shatter it, yet when happiness is rooted in something inward, truth, purpose, love, it becomes unshakable. The world cannot give such joy, and therefore the world cannot take it away. The illusion of modern happiness is that we can have the reward without the discipline, the joy without the depth, and the peace without the struggle. But real joy does not come cheaply. It grows through the cultivation of the soul. The pursuit of comfort has done more to dull human happiness than hardship ever did. Comfort, though pleasant, can become a cage that prevents growth. It keeps the soul from learning endurance, humility, and dependence on something higher than itself. When people avoid every difficulty in search of perpetual ease, they rob themselves of the very lessons that make happiness possible. There is beauty in struggle, for it shapes the heart and clarifies what truly matters. The illusion of modern happiness suggests that the goal of life is to feel good at all times, yet the moments that define us are often the ones that do not feel good at all. The person who has walked through sorrow and chosen gratitude, who has faced failure and still believes in goodness, knows a happiness the comfortable will never taste. Gratitude is the antidote to illusion. Modern life, obsessed with comparison, makes us blind to blessings. We measure ourselves against others, and in doing so, we poison the joy we already have. The world teaches us to want more, to need more, to be more, but never to pause and give thanks for what already is. Gratitude reawakens the soul to reality. It reminds us that happiness is not found in abundance, but in awareness. A poor man who gives thanks for his daily bread lives in more joy than a rich man who constantly fears losing his wealth. When gratitude becomes a way of seeing, life itself becomes richer. The illusion loses its power, for happiness returns to its natural place, not as a possession, but as a perspective. Connection is another lost art in the illusion of modern happiness. We have learned to connect with screens, but forgotten how to connect with souls. We seek validation instead of relationship, attention instead of affection. The world tells us that happiness is found in being seen, yet true happiness lies in being known. The heart longs not for followers, but for understanding. It is love, not popularity, that heals the inner void. To love and to be loved is to experience a kind of joy that no digital applause can imitate. This love requires vulnerability, patience, and sacrifice. qualities the modern illusion teaches us to avoid because they do not feel easy. Yet it is precisely in these difficult virtues that real joy flourishes. The illusion of happiness promises everything but delivers nothing lasting. It offers comfort but not peace, excitement but not purpose, pleasure but not fulfillment. The human heart was not designed to be endlessly entertained. It was designed to be engaged, to create, to serve, and to grow. Happiness is not found in chasing every desire but in mastering them. It is not the absence of want, but the harmony of the soul when it desires rightly. When the heart learns this truth, the noise of the world begins to fade. The distractions lose their hold, and what remains is something pure and steady, a joy that does not depend on circumstance, but flows from within, quiet yet powerful, like a still river beneath the surface of life. Happiness is not the final destination of life, but the quiet companion that walks beside a life lived with purpose. The modern mind has been trained to chase happiness as though it were a trophy waiting at the end of a long race. Yet the moment one begins to seek happiness for its own sake, it slips away like mist in the morning sun. Happiness cannot be caught, because it was never meant to be pursued directly. It is the natural outcome of a life that means something. When the heart aligns with purpose, joy flows without effort. To live without purpose is to wander without compass, no matter how much one possesses. Purpose gives direction, clarity, and substance to every action, and through that direction, happiness quietly enters the soul. Purpose begins where self-interest ends. It is found not in asking, "What do I want from life?" but rather, "What does life ask of me?" The person who lives only for himself will always feel a lingering emptiness, no matter how much he achieves, for the self is too small a thing to live for. When one's life is connected to something greater, a cause, a belief, a responsibility, or a divine calling, the heart awakens to a deeper rhythm. There is a sacred satisfaction that comes from knowing that one's actions have meaning beyond personal comfort. The doctor who heals, the teacher who guides, the worker who labors with honesty, all partake in a happiness far richer than mere pleasure. This is because happiness, in its highest form, is born not from indulgence, but from contribution. The greatest paradox of joy is that it is found in giving, not receiving. The world preaches that happiness comes when others serve us, but the soul discovers joy when it serves others. A purposeful life transforms ordinary acts into sacred ones. Sweeping a floor, raising a child, or comforting a friend. Each becomes a vessel through which meaning flows. The one who learns to see purpose in even the smallest tasks will never live an empty day. For it is not the grandeur of the action, but the heart behind it that fills life with joy. The secret to lasting happiness is not found in changing what we do, but in transforming how we see what we do. When every action is done with love, gratitude, and intention, the dull becomes divine. Living with purpose also means living with alignment, when thought, word, and deed move together in harmony. Many live divided lives, saying one thing, believing another, and doing yet another. Such division breeds inner conflict and robs the heart of peace. A person who acts against his conscience may enjoy momentary gain, but will lose the serenity that gives life meaning. Purpose unites the fragments of one's being. It gives courage to act rightly even when it is inconvenient. The one who knows his purpose does not drift with every opinion or circumstance. He walks with stability because he knows why he walks. Happiness follows naturally in such a life, for the soul finds rest in integrity. There is no greater peace than to know one's actions reflect one's values, and no deeper joy than to live in accordance with truth. The pursuit of purpose requires patience, for it does not always reveal itself immediately. Many wander through seasons of uncertainty, wondering why they are here and what they are meant to do. Yet even this searching is sacred. Purpose grows quietly in the soil of experience, watered by reflection, discipline, and faith. Each trial and triumph shapes the soul to recognize what truly matters. Often, purpose is not discovered in a sudden revelation, but in the slow unfolding of daily faithfulness. A person who strives to do the next right thing, even when it feels small, is already walking in purpose. Happiness begins to bloom when one learns to find meaning not in the extraordinary, but in the ordinary. To live with purpose is also to live with endurance. Purpose does not promise ease. It demands perseverance. There will be days when the path feels heavy and the results unseen. Yet, it is in those very moments that purpose refines the spirit. Happiness that depends on success will falter when failure comes. But happiness rooted in purpose endures even in defeat. The heart that works for something meaningful finds strength in struggle. It understands that every challenge deepens resolve, every setback shapes character, and every delay teaches humility. True joy is not the absence of hardship, but the confidence that one's hardship has meaning. The person who lives for purpose no longer fears difficulty, for he knows that even pain serves a greater good. Purpose also brings clarity to the chaos of modern life. The world is filled with endless options, distractions, and demands that fragment attention and drain energy. Without purpose, the soul is pulled in every direction and finds rest in none. But when purpose is clear, distractions lose their power. Every choice becomes simpler because one knows what truly matters. The purposeful person is not easily swayed by envy or comparison, for his happiness is not measured against others, but by the quiet knowledge that he is walking the path meant for him. This focus liberates the heart from the restless desire to prove, compete, or impress. Happiness becomes an inward calm rather than an outward achievement. The deepest purpose a person can live for is love for others, love for truth, love for the Creator, and love for the gift of life itself. Love gives meaning to every endeavor and transforms existence into service. When one acts out of love, even the smallest effort becomes radiant with significance. Love teaches that happiness is not a reward, but a responsibility. To bring light where there is darkness, hope where there is despair, and kindness where there is indifference. A life guided by love becomes a life guided by purpose, and in that alignment, joy is inevitable. It is the kind of joy that does not shout but whispers, that does not depend on circumstances but on conviction. Ultimately, purpose gives happiness a home. It grounds joy so that it does not vanish with change or time. It transforms every season of life, success or failure, joy or sorrow, into part of a meaningful whole. A person who lives with purpose can face each day with quiet confidence, knowing that his life, though imperfect, is not wasted. Every breath becomes a gift, every act an offering, and every moment a step towards something eternal. Happiness ceases to be an elusive dream and becomes instead a faithful companion. The natural result of living for something greater than oneself. True contentment is one of the rarest treasures of the human heart. It is not the result of perfect circumstances, but the ability to remain peaceful amid imperfection. Most people believe happiness will come when life finally becomes easy, when problems disappear, and when desires are fulfilled. Yet this belief leads only to disappointment, for life is never without its storms. The art of contentment is not learned in comfort, but in challenge. It is the calm center that remains unmoved, even when everything around trembles. The one who learns to find peace within struggle possesses a strength greater than any that comes from power or success. Contentment does not mean indifference, it means acceptance. It is the quiet courage to face reality as it is, while still choosing to be grateful. The restless soul is always waiting for tomorrow, always believing happiness lies just beyond reach, in the next achievement, the next relationship, or the next season of life. But true contentment begins when the soul stops running and learns to dwell in the present moment. Life is not something that will begin when circumstances align. It is happening now. The one who constantly chases what's next forgets to appreciate what already is. Every day holds small blessings, but discontent blinds the heart to them. Gratitude, therefore, is the doorway to contentment. When the heart is thankful for what it has, it loses the constant hunger for what it lacks. Gratitude turns ordinary moments into sacred ones, and the simple act of acknowledging the good transforms even difficult days into opportunities for joy. Contentment does not grow in a heart obsessed with comparison. The world is filled with endless measures of success, wealth, beauty, recognition, that deceive people into thinking happiness is a competition. Yet comparison always breeds misery, for there will always be someone who seems to have more. The contented person does not measure his worth against another's fortune. He measures it against his own growth. He knows that peace cannot be borrowed from someone else's life. To envy another's blessings is to forget one's own. When the heart learns to rejoice sincerely in the good of others, it frees itself from the chains of jealousy. True contentment, then, is not found in having all things, but in loving what one has. The journey toward contentment requires humility. A proud heart is never satisfied because pride demands more. It thrives on superiority and control. But the humble heart accepts limits, understanding that life's imperfections are not punishments but teachers. Humility allows the soul to rest, for it no longer needs to prove its worth through possessions or praise. The person who is content with little possesses more wealth than the one who owns much but craves more. Simplicity becomes a form of strength. When one is no longer enslaved by desire, life's beauty reveals itself in the small, often overlooked moments: the warmth of sunlight, the laughter of a friend, the peace of quiet reflection. Contentment is not a denial of ambition. It is the discipline of gratitude amidst pursuit. It says, I can strive for better while being thankful for what I have. Peace within struggle comes from perspective. The discontented person sees only what is missing. The contented person sees what remains. When hardship comes, it is easy to focus on what has been taken away. But even in loss, there are gifts that endure: character, faith, hope, and love. These are the foundations upon which lasting peace is built. Every challenge, every disappointment, is an opportunity to deepen reliance on what truly matters. The one who endures hardship with patience learns that joy is not fragile. It does not break when life becomes difficult, because it is anchored in something deeper than circumstance. Contentment grows from this anchoring. It is the fruit of a heart that trusts life's purpose, even when that purpose is hidden. True contentment also demands surrender, the willingness to release control over things that cannot be changed. Much of human misery comes not from what happens, but from the refusal to accept what happens. The heart that fights constantly against reality exhausts itself, while the heart that accepts reality gains peace. Acceptance is not weakness, it is wisdom. It does not mean resignation but trust. It says, I may not understand, but I will believe there is meaning even here. In that surrender, fear loses its grip. The mind becomes quiet, and peace begins to settle. Life ceases to feel like a battle and begins to feel like a journey. Those who can release their grasp on what they cannot control discover freedom in its purest form. Contentment is also a form of strength in a world that thrives on dissatisfaction. Society constantly whispers that you are incomplete, that happiness is always one purchase, one achievement, or one change away. The contented person stands against this tide. They have learned that fulfillment does not come from accumulation, but from appreciation. They may own little yet feel rich, for their joy is not stored in possessions, but in perspective. This kind of happiness cannot be marketed or manufactured. It is cultivated in silence, in reflection, in the daily choice to be thankful rather than resentful. The world may call such people simple, but they are the wisest of all, for they have discovered a happiness that cannot be taken away. The strength of contentment is most visible during hardship. When life brings pain, disappointment, or loss, the discontented heart breaks under the weight of unmet expectations. But the contented heart bends without breaking. It endures sorrow without despair, because it has learned that peace is not the absence of trouble, but the presence of faith. Even when surrounded by uncertainty, it remains calm because it trusts that every season serves a purpose. This kind of serenity cannot be faked or forced. It grows through patience and faith. The storms of life do not destroy it, they refine it. Contentment is not born from perfect days, but from a resilient spirit that continues to hope. At its deepest level, contentment is communion with truth. It is the alignment of the heart with reality, the ability to say, "This moment is enough." It does not deny ambition or growth, but frees them from anxiety. It allows one to dream without despair, to hope without hurry, and to work without fear. The truly content person does not need constant proof that life is good. They simply know it. Their peace is not loud or dramatic, but steady and enduring. In every situation, they find something to be grateful for, something to learn, and something to love. And in that simple, steady gratitude, they discover that the secret to happiness is not in changing the world, but in seeing it rightly. With a heart that has learned to rest in what is. Love is the deepest and most enduring source of human happiness, for it draws the soul out of itself and connects it to something eternal. Every other form of joy is temporary, fading with circumstance. But love endures because it reflects the very essence of what life is meant to be. When one lives only for self, happiness becomes fragile and fleeting. It depends on constant validation and comfort, and it withers whenever the self is disappointed. But when one learns to love, to give without expecting, to care without calculation, joy begins to take root in a deeper place. Love transforms the heart from a vessel of need into a fountain of abundance. It teaches that happiness is not something to be taken from the world, but something to be given to it. Love requires a surrender of pride, for it demands that we see others not as tools for our fulfillment, but as souls worthy of care and compassion. The self-centered person sees relationships as means to an end, seeking affection only to satisfy their own emptiness. But true love gives freely, without concern for return. It is not sentimental or weak. It is the strongest force that exists, because it continues even when feelings waver. Real love is not merely emotion but decision. It is the will to seek the good of another even at personal cost. And in that self-forgetfulness lies the birth of lasting happiness. The more one gives, the richer the heart becomes. Love multiplies joy precisely because it is not hoarded. It is a law of the soul. What is given away in love never diminishes but grows stronger. The beauty of love is that it transforms the ordinary into the sacred. A simple gesture, a word of kindness, an act of forgiveness, a moment of patience, can carry eternal weight. The person who loves learns to see the divine in daily life. A shared smile becomes a prayer, a helping hand becomes a form of worship. Love elevates every action, no matter how small, because it infuses it with purpose. When one acts from love, the mundane becomes meaningful, and the routine becomes radiant. This is why the happiest people are not those who have everything, but those who love deeply. Love gives life texture, color, and direction. It heals the wounds of loneliness and fills the soul with peace that no achievement can replicate. However, love is not without pain. It exposes the heart, making it vulnerable to rejection, loss, and disappointment. But even in its suffering, love brings growth. The pain of love refines the soul, teaching humility, compassion, and endurance. Those who fear pain and guard their hearts from love often end up living half-lives, safe but empty. To love is to risk, but it is also to live fully. Every wound caused by love carries a hidden blessing, for it expands the heart's capacity for empathy. The person who has truly loved cannot remain bitter, for love softens even the hardest grief. It whispers that joy is still possible, that beauty can rise from ashes. Love does not shield us from suffering. It teaches us how to suffer meaningfully, and through that transformation, it becomes the wellspring of the deepest joy. In loving others, we also come to understand ourselves. Love reveals the best and worst within us, our patience and our pride, our gentleness and our selfishness. It is a mirror that reflects who we are and who we could become. Through love, the soul matures, for it learns that joy does not come from possessing, but from participating in something greater than the self. When one loves sincerely, ego begins to fade, and humility takes root. In serving another, the heart becomes free from its own demands. This freedom is the essence of happiness, to live without the weight of constant self-concern, to find joy in another's smile, to feel peace in another's comfort. In such love there is no fear, because love has already conquered it. Forgiveness is one of love's greatest expressions, and it is essential to true happiness. Bitterness poisons joy. Resentment turns the heart inward and hardens it against life. But forgiveness breaks the chains that bind the soul to pain. To forgive is not to excuse what was wrong, but to choose peace over vengeance. It is a declaration that the past will not rule the present. Only love gives the strength to forgive, and only forgiveness keeps love alive. The one who forgives freely finds freedom, while the one who clings to anger finds misery. Happiness and love are inseparable, because love heals the divisions that make the heart restless. When love flows unblocked by pride or bitterness, peace follows naturally. Love also teaches the sacred rhythm of giving and receiving. There are seasons to pour out and seasons to be replenished. Some believe love means constant sacrifice, yet love must also allow itself to be loved. True joy is found not in dominance but in reciprocity, in the gentle exchange of care and understanding between souls. When love is mutual, it becomes a living force that grows with time, deepening both giver and receiver. It teaches patience, because real connection takes time. It teaches mercy, because all hearts are fragile, and it teaches faith, because love demands trust even in uncertainty. Through these lessons, happiness becomes something stable and enduring rather than fleeting. At its purest, love reflects the divine nature of existence itself. It is the bridge between the human and the eternal. To love is to participate in something infinite, to align the heart with the highest truth. Every act of love echoes beyond itself, touching lives unseen. Even when love seems wasted, it never truly is, for it leaves traces of goodness that continue long after the act is forgotten. The person who loves contributes to the healing of the world, whether they realize it or not. Their joy becomes contagious, their peace becomes strength for others. Love multiplies itself endlessly, for every heart it touches becomes capable of loving in return. In a world that often mistakes possession for affection and attraction for love, genuine love stands apart as a quiet but invincible power. It does not boast, it does not demand. It simply endures. It builds bridges where pride builds walls. It creates harmony where division once ruled. And in doing so, it reveals the deepest truth about happiness, that it is not found in what we take, but in what we give, not in being served, but in serving, not in being admired, but in understanding and uplifting another soul. Love, therefore, is the ultimate teacher of joy, the language of purpose, and the secret melody that keeps the heart alive even when all else fades. Hope is the quiet strength that keeps the soul alive when everything else seems to fade. It is not mere optimism or wishful thinking. It is the deep conviction that goodness still has the final word, even when darkness appears to prevail. Hope is not blind to the reality of pain, but it refuses to be ruled by it. It looks straight into chaos and whispers, "This is not the end." Happiness, therefore, does not belong to those who live untroubled lives, but to those who can sustain hope in troubled times. For hope gives meaning to struggle, turning despair into growth and waiting into preparation. It is the unseen anchor that steadies the heart when storms threaten to tear it apart. Without hope, the mind becomes restless, the heart grows cold, and life loses its melody. But with hope, even the most complicated world becomes bearable, because one learns to trust that purpose exists beyond the present confusion. The discipline of hope is learned in the moments when everything seems uncertain. It is not a natural gift, but a cultivated virtue, strengthened through patience and endurance. Hope requires practice because it demands trust in what cannot yet be seen. The human spirit often seeks control, longing to know the outcome before the journey begins. But hope teaches surrender, not the surrender of effort, but of fear. It teaches that even when life does not unfold as planned, there is still a guiding order, a hidden meaning behind the detours. Those who walk with hope walk differently. Their steps may falter, but they do not stop. They face life's contradictions not with denial, but with faith that each twist holds a lesson. Such hope does not remove suffering, but it transforms it into a pathway of wisdom. Through hope, pain becomes a teacher rather than a tormentor. To live with hope is to resist despair. Despair is the temptation to believe that nothing can change, that the future is only a repetition of present sorrow. It is a heavy silence that tells the soul to stop dreaming. Hope breaks that silence. It challenges despair by reminding us that change often begins quietly, in unseen places, long before it becomes visible. The seed buried in the soil seems lost, yet within that darkness new life is forming. In the same way, the heart that holds on through its darkest season is preparing for renewal. The discipline of hope means believing in that unseen process, nurturing it with patience, even when there are no immediate signs of growth. It is choosing to trust that the dawn will come, not because circumstances guarantee it, but because truth itself is stronger than night. Hope also demands humility. It requires admitting that we do not have all the answers, and that the story of our lives is being written by a wisdom greater than our own. The proud heart despairs quickly, for it cannot bear uncertainty. But the humble heart accepts that understanding comes gradually, and that some of the most painful chapters may hold the most beautiful purposes. Hope gives peace not because it reveals every answer, but because it teaches trust in the one who does. When one learns to live in this spirit of trust, anxiety begins to fade. The restless mind no longer needs constant control, and the heart learns to rest even amid confusion. Happiness, then, becomes less about having everything resolved, and more about living with confidence that resolution will come in its time. The most hopeful people are not those who have escaped hardship, but those who have walked through it without losing their light. Hope gives them endurance. It becomes the quiet companion that whispers courage when strength is gone. It reminds them that even the longest night cannot erase the stars. Such people radiate a peace that confuses the world, a peace born not from ignorance of pain, but from mastery over it. Their happiness is not shallow laughter, but deep serenity, built on the conviction that life is meaningful even in its mysteries. Hope has taught them that suffering is not the enemy of joy, but often its cradle. In learning to hope, they have learned to see beyond immediate loss to the enduring good that waits beyond it. Hope also unites people. It reminds the lonely, that they are part of a larger human story, where countless others struggle toward light as well. It lifts the heart from isolation into fellowship. When shared, hope multiplies. When spoken, it strengthens others to believe again. A single word of encouragement, a small act of kindness, can awaken hope in a weary soul. And when hope is rekindled, happiness returns like warmth to a frozen field. The world grows gentler wherever hope takes root, because it reawakens compassion. Those who live with hope become beacons for others. They help them see that despair is not destiny, and that healing is always possible. Hope is not only about waiting, it is also about action. It calls for courage to keep moving forward, even when the outcome is unclear. To hope is to keep sowing seeds in barren soil, to keep building even when foundations shake, to keep loving even when hearts break. Hope refuses passivity. It transforms belief into perseverance and faith into work. It says, "Though I cannot see the end, I will still take the next step." This is the secret of those who find happiness in chaos. They live as builders of hope, creating light wherever darkness gathers. Their joy is not dependent on results, but on the knowledge that they are participating in something meaningful. Finally, hope sustains vision. It lifts the eyes from what is temporary to what is eternal. When life is viewed only through the lens of the present, despair easily takes hold. But hope reminds the heart that life is part of a larger story, one that is still unfolding, one in which every trial has its purpose and every ending is only the beginning of something greater. The discipline of hope, therefore, is the discipline of remembering. It is remembering that even in confusion, life is guided by wisdom. Even in loss, love remains. Even in silence, purpose is being written. To live with such remembrance is to live with unshakable peace. Hope is the quiet song that keeps the human spirit alive when the world grows loud with fear. It is not always loud or visible, but it endures through every season. It gives meaning to suffering, courage to endurance, and direction to faith. Through it, happiness ceases to be a fragile emotion and becomes a steadfast state of being, a calm assurance that light, no matter how distant, will always return.